Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Fantasy Football Fix Game Week 29 live stream. My name is FPL Nacho, and I am going to be hopefully your guide throughout this live stream to try and navigate some of the hot topics going into Saturday's deadline. Now, of course, this isn't a deadline live stream, so it's a great opportunity for us to sit back, cover some of the hot topics, the captaincy discussions, of course, looking at the Fantasy Football Fix algorithm to help you guys decide those key transfers going into this weekend. So as always, guys, if you have any questions, please do drop them in the chat. I'll be sure to answer all of the questions throughout this live stream. And as always, if you are enjoying the live stream, please do drop a like and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Now, all the information here is taken from Fantasy Football Fix, the leading FPL platform. So if you want to win those mini leagues or improve those overall ranks, make sure you do head over to fantasyfootballfix.com. Links are all in the bio as usual, and I highly recommend you guys uploading your scores for free just to get access to some of the free tools available. And of course, a lot of the stuff that I'm going to be showing you guys today are some of our premium tools, which you will get through our premium membership, which I highly recommend you guys testing out for sure. So things that we're going to be covering in this live stream, guys. And again, please do drop a hi in the chat. Let me know who is tuning in on this live stream so far. Lots of hot topics to cover. I see we got Rio in there. I hope we're doing well. Cheeks, I hope we're doing well. We've got plenty to discuss in this one. Importantly, Doherty versus Reguilon. I know a lot of managers right now are currently sat there with the likes of Reece James, potentially looking at a sideways move ahead of game week 29. And Doherty, off the performances that he's had recently, I think that's going to be an interesting discussion to have. So we're going to be looking at Doherty versus Reguilon. Then we'll be looking at the best defenders to target over the coming game weeks. And this is going to be beneficial for those that are free hitting in game week 30 and those that aren't free hitting in game week 30. Because I think there's definitely particular defenders that cater towards those that are free hitting and not free hitting. So I think that's going to be a really good discussion. Then we're also going to be looking at, importantly, those captaincy players ahead of game week 29. Now, Mo Salah is obviously leading the way right now, as you can expect, but I think there's a few other players that we need to have a discussion about in particular as well. And then I want to briefly touch on Kulusevski. I think he's a great option going into game week 29. I want to look at him compared to the likes of Son and also alongside the likes of Arsenal Saka, whether there's alternatives to go in with Kulusevski. But again, guys, please do drop any of the questions that you do have. I see we got here with a gamer saying Salah is a good captain. Great question. Something that we're definitely going to be covering throughout this live stream for sure. Joe saying Doherty or Reguilon. Hopefully I answer that one there for you, buddy. We'll be covering that in a minute, so definitely stick around for that. Cheekster flying, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Definitely getting very lucky recently, but really glad to have a good good rank so far. Kerry saying Salah triple captain. Yeah. Really great question. Make sure you don't duplicate those questions just because it will be difficult for me to read the other questions. But we're definitely going to be looking at Salah as a captaincy option, in particular a triple captaincy option as well. And Dan, I hope you're doing well, buddy. I see you had a great season so far. Keep it up. Ridwan, Jimenez for Kane or Broha for Kane. I have the funds. Again, another discussion we're going to have for sure. But I think that one, Ridwan, is going to be all about your game week 30 team. What is your situation right now? Because as we know, Jimenez plays in game week 30, we think. Broha doesn't. So it's all about if you need to field a team for game week 30. If that is the case, I probably would recommend getting rid of Broha for that scenario. So let's touch on what I discussed previously, guys. And that is going to be Doherty versus Reguilon. Now, I think this is a discussion right now which clearly recency has brought Doherty to the discussion. Who would have thought a few weeks back we would be discussing about Matt Doherty in the FPL community? Obviously priced at 4.7 million, looking like a great value pick right now. And I think that's really important to discuss right now is Matt Doherty, I think at his price point makes him a really attractive FPL asset. I think if we were looking at him around the 5 million, 5.5 million, although he had a really good last 2 game weeks, I don't really think we could be considering him as an FPL option just because of, first and foremost, we need to touch on these few topics. Conte and his team are really, really emphasised on their wing backs. That's the first and foremost we need to discuss. We've seen the amount of work that they get through each game. And I think that's a big caveat we need to put on Matt Doherty is Emerson Royal on the bench. with the double game week and then the game week and game week 30, please just be cautious that if you are bringing in a Tottenham wingback, that rotation is always a potential with Conte's team, in particular the wingbacks. Now, something that I do give Conte credit for, if a team is doing well, he will stick with that team. We've seen it in the Chelsea days as well. But in particular, these wingbacks, just because of the amount of work they get through, are always rotation risks. So just have that as a caveat. But we know because of Matt Doherty's price point, makes him a brilliant asset. And if you're sat there, potentially with Reece James, I think Matt Doherty is a really nice sideways move because he frees up loads of funds for you to invest elsewhere in your squad. Now, the big discussion right now, if you are looking at Spurs defensively, is Doherty versus Reguilon in terms of the wing-backs. Session been ruled out with a, I believe, hamstring injury. Not sure on the duration of it, but I think that makes Reguilon at left wing-back a bit more secure than it was in the last few game weeks, as Session has basically had that shirt in that left wing-back spot. So, as always, I have got the player heat map section over on Fantasy Football Fix us to compare the two players, see how they've been operating under Conte. Now, I'm going to firstly leave it as both players over the course of the season so far, just to get an idea on how they've been operating. And it's worth mentioning, Reguilon has played over just under 1,000 minutes more than Matt Doherty. So, sorry, 1,000 minutes less than Matt Doherty. So it's worth mentioning that the data here is really, really small for Matt Doherty in comparison to Sergio Reguilon. So it's worth touching on that. But what we will do in a minute is filter it by the last 5 game weeks, just for us to get a bit more of an understanding on the recency of the two players. Again, going to be difficult there because I know Reguilon hasn't featured much recently. But when we look at the touch sheet maps here for both players, clearly we can see that they get chalk on their boots, as the old classic saying goes. Conte's system is all about keeping these wing-backs nice and wide. Very different to what Pep Guardiola does with his wing-backs, his full-backs, playing them as inverted full-backs. These are classic out-and-out full-backs operating on the touchlines there. Now, Reguilon again, getting a few more touches in and around the box, and importantly, getting those touches from the byline. That is kind of what you expect from Reguilon, being a very offensive. But Matt Doherty, interestingly, not as offensive in regards to his majority of his touches, operating much more in the middle third of the opposition half there. And we saw that with his 2 assists, or his 1 assist at least against Kane, playing more of a longer diagonal ball over the top of the defence rather than getting to the touchline and putting those balls across the box. Whether that's a trend that's going to continue, I think that's again something we need to discuss, because the information we're taking right now with Doherty is over the last few game weeks. I haven't seen enough from Doherty to say that this is going to be a trend going forward. Like, are we going to say that Doherty is going to be pinging those balls from 40 yards out over the top of the defence week in, week out? I don't know if that's the case. I think, again, we're taking it very much from short sample size. So I think we need to just have that as a caveat right now. But when we come down here into the actual underlying stats for the two, and again, I want to look at this based on per 90 minutes because Reguilon has played so many more minutes than Matt Doherty. You can see that the Doherty's winning in all the departments in regards to the per 90. Goals, 0.18 compared to Reguilon's 0.12. Expected goals in Matt Doherty's favour. Shots, again, 1.94 it per 90 compared to Reguilon's 0.9. All these sort of underlying stats do favour Doherty's side. But again, what we discussed about the crossing in regards to Reguilon getting to the byline, he is winning that department. Crosses, 1.44 per 90 compared to Doherty's, which kind of is understandable based on the touch heat map that we did see there. Reguilon, with his touches, definitely being more of the positions to make crosses rather than Doherty's. So that is quite an interesting observation there to see on the touch heat map. But again, guys, it all comes down to the price point of the players. And as I mentioned, I do think that Tottenham fullbacks, wingbacks, are massive risks from a rotational perspective just because of the amount of work that they get through. So based on that alone, I think that Matt Doherty is the better option over Reguilon. I think there's a chance that we could see potentially, for example, Matt Doherty at left wing back. We could then see Emerson Royal at right wing back. So I don't think it necessarily makes Sergio Reguilon rotation proof just because Session's out. I think there's definitely potential for Conte to shift the system to have him rotated. So don't rule out Reguilon getting rotated. So because of the price point, I think Matt Doherty is the route to go for if you are looking at Reguilon versus Matt Doherty. Now again, guys, let me know in the chat, who are you favouring right now? Is there a particular fullback at Spurs, obviously between the two, that you are discussing? I'll be really interested to know here, because I personally think that Doherty is probably just worthwhile because of that price point. As we see, I see Connor in there saying, has anyone told me I look like Nacho Monre? That is a something that obviously got created from the FPL fan show. And yeah, guys, I've had FPL Nacho as kind of the name since then, really. Unreal, right? Thank you, buddy. Our gamer saying, activated free hit, which player or clubs should I buy? And Gojo saying, how about getting Kulusevski? So Kulusevski is something we'll be touching on in a minute, a comparison between Kulusevski and Son. And I also want to put Saka in the equation. So I would definitely be putting that later on in the live stream. But again, guys, let me know in the chat, what is your current kind of thought process? Are you going for Doherty? Reguilon, someone that you're going for otherwise, because I think Reguilon is a nice alternative, but I just think the price point of Matt Doherty makes it very much more tempting to go for Matt Doherty. Now, in terms of defenders, guys, I think it's worthwhile touching on that we are all in different situations right now as we speak. Some managers right now are free hitting in game week 30, therefore some defenders are more appealing than others. So, for example, Liverpool defenders, I think if you are sat there right now having to field a team in game week 30, then the likes of Robertson might not necessarily be as attractive as for those managers that are free hitting in game week 30. And that's because we know Liverpool are blanking in game week 30. Therefore, it seems not the most optimal transfer for you to go Robertson when you could get Matt Doherty for potentially 3 games as opposed to Robertson's 2. Now, if you're free hitting in game week 30, it makes Liverpool and it makes Chelsea attractive assets because you can obviously navigate the blank game week 30. So what I've done here is brought up the fixed comparison matrix for particular defenders that feature in game week 30 and don't feature in game week 30. So we can get a bit of an understanding on, if you are going for a different strategy, what route to go down. So it's worth mentioning, Robertson and Rudiger are the 2 players that fall into that category of they don't play in game week 30, but have good fixtures either side of the 2. And we know Liverpool in particular have a double game week in 29. And I think a lot of managers right now would love to bring in Robertson into their teams. They're just seeing that game week 30 blank as an opportunity to maybe capitalise on the likes of Doherty, who is a lot cheaper and plays in game week 30. But I've decided to filter this by the usual stuff: FPL points, goals, shots, FPL assists, for us to get an understanding on which player, first and foremost, is the best to target. And secondly, if you are going down the non-free hit route in game week 30, which player to target. Now, I've put Matty Cash into the equation because I know a lot of people right now saw the unbelievable performance that he did have in game week 28 and maybe considering him as an option going forward. He is a player that does feature in game week 30. Aston Villa looked great in that performance against Leeds, but again, it's worth noting that it is Leeds and they are on a bit of a poor run right now as we speak. So again, for those that are new to the fixed comparison matrix, you can see below the names of the players, the projected points over the next 5 game weeks. And you can see that Robertson and Tierney both on identical projected points on 23.6. Now again, Robertson does feature less over the 5 game weeks because of course he blanks in game week 30. Tierney, we know, double in game week 29, and then of course plays in game week 30, which is obviously a really attractive prospect for someone like Tierney. Cash, on the other hand, no double game week. Doherty with the double and then the game in game week 30, and then Rudiger with a single game week. So understandable why his projected points are a lot less than the likes of Robertson and Tierney. Now, it's worth noting with Doherty, with his projected points here at 12.2, I think there is a factor here of those expected minutes and the recent times that he has had with his minutes being managed. So the projected points I would expect to increase and be a bit more accurate if he is to feature in game week 29. So that's something we can come back to in a future live stream if we're looking to target him in game week 30. I think the projected points will kind of be a bit more accurate because he'll have more game time for us to analyse if he is a good asset or not. Now look at the underlying stats here. We can see I've done it by average per game, because all these players have played very differing minutes. So it gives us an opportunity to see how they're operating when they do play 90 minutes. No surprises right now that Robertson is leading the way on FPL points with 6.2 per 90. Absolutely no surprises there because we know he's probably been one of the best FPL defenders in the game over the last 10 game weeks. He's been operating on the same sort of level as Trent Alexander-Arnold, which is a compliment in itself. But outside of Robertson, because I need to state that he is by far the most expensive player, of the 5 that we are discussing right now, and rightly so because of his underlying stats. But Tierney operating 4.9 points per 90, and I think Tierney's been somebody who a lot of managers have been a little bit frustrated with, not seeing the flying Scotsman that we've used to be seeing in the last season or so. Been a little bit more reserved in the Arsenal team, whether that's been because of the injuries to the likes of Tomiyasu and the emphasis on Cedric being more the offensive fullback and Tierney be a bit more defensive. Maybe that's the case. Hopefully, if there's an Arsenal supporter in the chat, they can let me know the reasoning behind that. But Tierney's still ticking along nicely, and based on our projected points, still a nice option to pick up if you want to go down that route. Now, FPL points as well. Rudiger 4.6 again, ticking over nicely with those clean sheets. Now, when we come a bit further down here, we can see goals all on 0.1 per 90, so nothing to separate them at all. FPL assists, again, Robertson in his own league. But at 0.4, Doherty is sitting there really attractive at 0.4 assists per game. Now, again, it's worth noting, his sample size is so much smaller than the others, so we can't really come to conclusions. I don't know what the right term is there. We can't come to conclusions based on such small sample sizes, but really good to see what he is producing in such a short time. If he can continue this, you can see why managers are attracted by him here. Now, I just want to quickly touch on Matty Cash here, because with the recent game weeks that he's had, underlying stats aren't necessarily jumping out at me. You can see that FPL assists 0.1 per game, 0.1 goals per game. Shots 0.9 per game, which is obviously pretty good for somebody. Only the likes of Rudiger and Doherty beating him there. And I think Matty Cash, although at 5.1 million, has been displaying really good underlying stats and performances over the last few game weeks, I think we could probably avoid Matty Cash right now with the fixtures coming up. And I think with a double for the likes of Doherty, for the likes of Robertson, if you can reach that far, I'm probably going to rule out Matty Cash as the option for you to go to right now. I know with the recent sort of games, you might be attracted by him, but I'm going to rule him out. So I think the way I look at it right now, guys, is if you're on the strategy of free hit in game week 30 and you look on either side, Robertson is the go-to man if you can afford him. Absolutely. Underlying stats are phenomenal. He is the route that I would go down. Rudiger, yes, I think he is a nice pickup for that Chelsea defence if you are looking to sell Reece James and bring in another Chelsea defender. But I think if you could stretch a little bit further, I really think the upside is going to be with Robertson in that Liverpool defence. And again, we touched on Doherty versus Reguilon. I think if I had a debate right now between Doherty versus Tierney, this is a really tough call because there's only 0.4 million between the two. And I think it comes down to whether you are a bit of an upside chaser or not. I think Tierney probably wins the battle there, but then it comes down to other assets in the game. And I think maybe Ramsdale as your defensive cover in the Arsenal team is probably the route that I would go down with Doherty as the defender, as opposed to Tierney plus Lloris. So I think that's the route I'd rather go down. Maybe Doherty as your upside chasing defender and Ramsdale as your safety kind of blanket in the Arsenal defence. So let me know in the chat, guys, who is your defender of choice right now over the coming game weeks? Let me know if you want me to drop a player in the conversation that we can look at. I will definitely put them in there for you guys to check out. Torja saying, is it worth a -8 to get Kane for Jimenez and Barnes for Son? Got Saka, Salah, Rafinha and Kulusevski. So I think the -8 is a really common strategy right now for managers who are currently sat there not really happy with not owning Kane. So the situation is, do you sell Son to bring in Harry Kane? Now, I think we need to understand that Son is still a phenomenal FPL asset. I think the big reasoning why managers right now are considering selling Son to go to Kane is because of the price point of Kulusevski. We know that there's no forward at Spurs that contends with Kane. So Kane plus Kulusevski is the temptation for managers right now, rather than having Son plus a crap forward right now, which we know are in the game. So I totally understand why managers want to go down that route. Barnes in that Leicester team, I believe, is the best attacking asset that you can go for. They play in game week 30, which of course, if you are not free hitting in game week 30, I think is a really nice strategy. So based on that, yes, I think that is a solid move, but I do urge managers not to rush to sell Son to strengthen your Kane move, because I don't necessarily think Son has become a terrible FPL asset overnight. I just appreciate that Kulusevski at his price point is offering brilliant value, and he is someone we're going to touch on in a minute. Mike saying Coutinho to Kulusevski for a -4. Is it worth it? I don't necessarily think if it's necessarily worth that move. Coutinho was one of the best players in game week 28 and an amazing asset, obviously, if you watched him from an eye test perspective. Yes, you're getting 2 games with Kulusevski, but you're getting a game from Coutinho likewise in game week 30. For a -4, I don't think that's necessarily the best move to make. Connor, I got to start 2 of Livramento, Rudiger, Broja, and Laporte thoughts. So, firstly, from a opinion-based perspective, I think I would have to play Rudiger just because I think he's definitely going to start, and I fancy him for a clean sheet potentially against Newcastle. Now, Livramento, Laporte, I think Laporte is probably the route I'll go down as well. Broja has been in a bit of a tough spot right now where he hasn't returned for managers, but obviously it's very difficult to bench someone like that because of his price point. You know that he could return at any point, but is there question marks about his rotation? I'm not too sure. So I would probably go for Rudiger and Laporte. I think it's a really good chance for me to bring up the projected points to get a little bit of a second opinion on this. So let me bring up the projected points for players in game week 29 in isolation for us to see how they operate against one another. I'm saying operate a lot here. I'm not sure why at all. So based on who the players that you mentioned, Livramento currently projected to score 4.1 points in game week 29. We know their fixture is against Watford at home, who obviously got battered in game week 28. So I think it's a really good fixture for Livramento. And the other player that you mentioned was Broja at 4.3 projected points. So you compare that between those two and Livramento, Broja wins that battle there. But when we look at the 2 of Rudiger, 4.8 projected points for Rudiger, and Laporte is coming in at 4.2 projected points. So based on the algorithm, Rudiger plus Broja is probably the route that you want to go down. I personally hate benching a Man City defender, so I probably would go for Rudiger plus Laporte, and then bench Livramento and Broja. But I appreciate that with that Watford fixture at home, it's going to be very difficult for you to bench both your Southampton players. The algorithm says for you to go for Broja plus Rudiger. Maybe that gives you that little bit of respite knowing that you have at least some Southampton coverage in the team. But is Broja going to definitely play? Oh, I don't know. It's a really tricky one, mate. So I do empathise with that one. That is a tough benching headache for sure. Guys, obviously let Connor know in the chat what route you would go down. So Victor here is saying triple captain on Mo Salah. And I think this is a good chance for me to discuss this topic, because I know a lot of managers right now that missed out on Mo Salah's monster haul in game week 26, I believe. There's an opportunity now for a double game week of Mo Salah once again. Brighton away and Arsenal away. Now, first and foremost, let's touch on the kind of mindset of the triple captain going into game week 29. Now, I am somebody who has my triple captain available to me. Now, we know that there are games still to be arranged later on in the season. We have, I believe, Spurs have a game to rearrange later on in the season. We know Leicester have got loads of games to rearrange, and we know Man City will probably have a double game week later on in the season as well. So the question is right now, do you play what's in front of you, one of the best players in the game, with a double game week against Brighton and Arsenal away? Could be better fixtures for sure, but still decent on paper. Or do you hold off your triple captain for fixtures that are uncertain, haven't been announced, but could equally be as good, if not better, than Mo Salah's? So the question mark is, do you want to risk it? And I think the answer is no. I don't think you need to overthink the triple captaincy unless you're in a spot where you're playing your wildcard or your free hit and you see massive upside in your strategy going down that route, because of course you can't play your triple captain on top of a free hit or a wildcard. Now, looking at the algorithm points here, I've decided to filter it by game week 29 in isolation. And you can see there, based on the double game week that Mo Salah has, he is projected to score 12.8 points over this period. Now, again, that is not the same level that he did produce in game week 26. I don't even want to remind myself what he did return then, because I was somebody who didn't triple captain him. But 12.8 point projected points is still really solid for a player that we are potentially triple captaining. Now, we look at Brighton away. No Webster, one of their best defenders and performers so far this season. And I think straight away that is a reason for us to triple captain Mo Salah. I think Brighton been really poor recently, conceding the goals. They haven't been the defensive outlet that they were at the first half of the season. In particular, that Webster absence being critical to that defence. So I think Mo Salah away to Brighton isn't as fearful as it was at the first half of the season. Arsenal away, yes, that is definitely a tricky fixture on paper. But Arsenal defensively haven't necessarily been the best over recent game weeks. We saw them concede 2 against Watford. And we obviously also seen them concede in previous game weeks as well. So I think Mo Salah, triple captain in game week 29. I don't think you need to be smart about it. I think it's the best opportunity to play your triple captain. And I will just get it done. Now, the other alternative is you playing your triple captain on Harry Kane in this game week in isolation. Man United, obviously, that they have. And then they have the other fixture against, let me get up a minute, away at Brighton as well. So very similar fixtures from a difficulty perspective. And I think Harry Kane is an argument to go against Mo Salah. But again, looking at the projected points at 9.7 for Harry Kane, I just think you don't have to overthink it. I think Mo Salah is the route to go to. Get it done, play the triple captain, and then you can just worry about the rest of your season being made with free transfers and maybe your free hit along the way. So let me know in the chat, guys, what route are you going for with your triple captain? Are you holding off? Are you using it on Salah this game week? I personally will be activating my triple captain on Mo Salah. I think it's the best game week to do so. So let me know in the chat, guys, what route are you going down? I'm going to say James to Van Dijk and Willock to Kulusevski for a -4, or just James to Robertson, 1 free transfer. Well, there's a few rumours about Van Dijk, absolutely nothing confirmed, but there's a few pictures where he wasn't in them. So I question whether he's definitely fit. There's a few rumours going around of COVID. Please don't take that into any of your decision making. There's absolutely no confirmation on that. But I'd probably just be tempted to do the James to Robertson move, in particular if you are free hitting in game week 30 for sure. Joseph, shall I keep St. Maximin or Jimenez? I think personally I would probably keep Jimenez. I think St. Maximin is a little bit of an injury risk right now. He could easily return from his injury and then be back on the physio tables. I would probably hold Jimenez and real pray that he's going to be playing in game week 30 there. Keith, went to wildcard if bench boosting in game week 36. Well, Keith, if you are bench boosting in game week 36, then I definitely think the strategy is to wildcard as close to possible to that bench boost. So that's going to be around game week 34 or game week 35. Build a team of 15 that you know are definitely going to be starting in game week 36. Then you can bench boost knowing that you're going to have 15, hopefully, players that get decent returns for you there. Joe, James and Ramsey to Doherty and Kulusevski. If you can reach that move, I don't mind that move. I think that's a solid move. I watched Ramsey in that Aston Villa performance against Leeds. And while I was really, really impressed from him from a player perspective, it does look like the way that Aston Villa are operating right now is very much a bank of 2 with Mings and whoever plays alongside, a flat 3 with, Douglas Luiz and Ramsey, almost holding McGinn, bombing on a little bit, but the wing backs being really emphasised on getting forward. And then the 3 of Coutinho, Watkins and Ings being the absolute kind of trio going forward, and one of the 3 from the midfield. Didn't see enough from Ramsey to suggest that he is going to be the one absolutely getting the returns. So therefore, I think that is a nice sideways move for you to make. And you are then gaining a player who's definitely playing in game week 30, while Ramsey may have question marks just because of his age. They might start to bring Samson into that midfield a little bit. FPL Penguin, who doing well, 9.8k right now. That's a brilliant rank. And obviously, if you guys haven't checked out FPL Penguin, please do so on YouTube. GBL, Everton defender or Newcastle defender on a free hit. Well, if you're looking at game week 29 in isolation, let's take a look at the defenders for our projected points to see who is kind of ranking the best. Now, I would be very surprised to see an Everton defender necessarily performing well on our projected points, but you can see that Holgate on 5.6 projected points with their double at home to Wolves and at home to Newcastle. Absolutely critical for Everton to pick up at least 4 points over this double game week. So based on our projected points, I think the Everton defenders are probably the route to go for. You can see there Coleman on 6.9 projected points. Whether he could get rotated just because of his age, I'm not too sure on that one. But I think Holgate, Coleman aren't bad picks on your free hit at all, just because you know they are not going to be staying in your team long term. Otherwise, Fabian Schär, not a bad pick as well based on our projected points at 4.8. So I think there's options available to you. I just wouldn't necessarily be rushing to an Everton or Newcastle defender personally, but I appreciate that with their double, it is a little bit more of an attractive option. And again, we are going to be touching on the Fantasy Football Fix Algorithm 11, which is effectively a free hit team. So we will be touching on that in a minute as well, because that will obviously be beneficial to those that are planning on a free hit. Andy's saying, what should I do with Cancelo and Bowen? I have 0.1 million in the bank. Andy, I think you're in a spot right now where I think Bowen is probably a sell, and I think a sideways move to Kulusevski is a solid move. In regards to Cancelo, I think you could easily hold on to him. Still one of the best assets in the game. We're completely overlooking him because of the other options available on the double game weeks. I think Cancelo's still a hold. So I think Bowen, maybe a sideways move to Kulusevski is a solid pick, and I would have no sweats about that because Bowen, we're just uncertain right now how long that injury is going to be. And BJN saying Dubravka versus Ramsdale on a wild card. Well, again, based on our projected points, I'm going to filter this because you're doing a wild card over the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 game weeks here, so you can get an idea on the goalkeepers to target. And you can see that Ramsdale is leading the way on projected points on 29.1. Dubravka, on the other hand, 21.8. Of course, blanking in game week 30. So Ramsdale, I think, is a really solid move for your wildcard teams. Their fixtures are really good long term. Play in game week 30, double in game week 29. Ramsdale will definitely be my pick at 5.1 million. I appreciate that Dubravka is a little bit cheaper and you could save a bit of money there, but I think with your wildcard team, you can make sacrifices elsewhere. So I think that going down that route is probably the route I would say. So Ramsdale is a really nice pickup in that one there. Now, guys, as I mentioned, the Spurs players are really on the agenda right now, as you can expect. And I think a lot of people right now are looking at Kulusevski, the Sons of the world, and debating which route to go down. So I'm going to bring up the player heat map here for Son versus Kulusevski. Now, again, very similar to Doherty versus Reguilon. We are getting really limited minutes with Kulusevski. So we're going to take this with a pinch of salt right now, just when we come to our conclusions here, because as you can see, Son has played basically 1,500 minutes more than Kulusevski. So Kulusevski's sample size is so much smaller, and we don't know necessarily whether he's able to maintain the form that he's in right now. Whereas Son, over a much larger sample size, you can see there is averaging 6.3 points per game. Kulusevski, on the other hand, 5.7. So that just makes Son's 6.3 points even more impressive because he's averaged it over such a larger sample size. So just take that into account when we do look at the projected points, the player heat maps, and the underlying stats for these two players. Now, when we look at the player heat map here, we can see Son, first and foremost, on set pieces, which is a real great, obviously, string in his bow from an FPL perspective. And something, again, that I think is really attractive when we do look at Son as an FPL option. But Kulusevski's touch heat map is really impressive as well. What I do like is the balance between touches in and around the box and outside of the box there. Sometimes we do see with these wingers, these front threes, getting plenty of touches outside of the box, but not many in and around the box. What I'm seeing here from Kulusevski is really, really promising. Son, exactly the sort of touch heat map I would expect to see. Plenty of touches in and around the box, and importantly, in that middle third as well, because obviously that is just the way that Spurs operate. So really impressive touch heat map from Kulusevski in the short time that he has had. And again, we're going to come down all the way to underlying stats per 90 minutes, because that will give us a bit more of an accurate representation between the two players. Now, Son goals 0.5 per 90. Just remember that, guys, before you sell Son, that this is one of the best FPL assets in the game. And 0.5 goals per 90 is a brilliant underlying stat to see. Kulusevski, on the other hand, 0.42. Now, again, really impressive underlying stat for Kulusevski, but just remember, it's over a lot of a much more of a shorter time period. Whether you can maintain that, I'm not too sure. But the shot volume is great for Kulusevski, 2.54 per 90, only slightly more than Son's. Shots on target is in Son's favour, but shots in the box is what I'm really liking to see from Kulusevski. He's not a long shot merchant necessarily. 2.32 shots in the box compared to Son's 1.58. And the assists as well is in Kulusevski's favour as well. So it's really, really promising stats to see from Kulusevski. And again, while I'm saying here and sitting here and saying that the sample size isn't big enough for Kulusevski to come to concrete conclusions, what I really do like is the 4 million difference between the two in FPL value. I really do think that that is the kind of argument that I can understand why people want to go to Kulusevski. I think that spot is absolutely locked for him in that front three. Clearly a fit guy. He's played pretty much every minute since he's been in the team, since he got that debut under Conte. And I really like what I'm seeing from Kulusevski in this standpoint. Now, what I want to quickly do here is filter it by when both are playing with one another in the team, just to see if there's any clear kind of anomalies that we can see in the touch heat map. So what we can do here, which is a really great part of the Fantasy Football Fix player heat map section, is filter it so it includes players on the pitch. So here on Son's side, I can do teammates on pitch must include, and of course we're going to put Kulusevski in there. And on Kulusevski's side, we're going to be putting on Son, just to get a clear representation of how they do play when they are playing together in the team. And this is really interesting reading here to see, because again, the minutes are obviously identical because they have played with one another in this period. And you can see, again, points per game is in Son's favour over this period. But when we come down here to the touch heat map, I'm seeing really good things here from Kulusevski, in particular, those touches in and around the box. Son, on the other hand, operating much more outside the box and getting less touches in and around. And when I come down here to the actual underlying stats, again, now we can look at these stats on a whole rather than per 90. We can see that goals 2 in favour of Kulusevski to Son's 1. Expected goals in Son's favour, so that is worth noting over this period. But shots in Kulusevski's favour, shots in the box, but the expected assists and attempted assists go to Son. So, conclusion, guys, I really think Kulusevski is an excellent FPL option. If I had to pick one and money wasn't an option, it would still be Son. I still am seeing enough from Son. I'm not seeing a drop off in Son's underlying stats to suggest he's a bad option. But I do think if you're in a position right now where you have a choice between Son or Kulusevski, I think it's Kulusevski right now because of that price point at 6.1 million. That means then you're probably going to have the funds to go for a Kulusevski plus Kane double up. And you're going to then be avoiding Son. But I think that double up will pay dividends over the course of the season. If you're in a position right now where you own Son, and I am someone that has that right now, I absolutely understand the route of going Son down to Kulusevski and then using those funds to upgrade your forward to Kane. I think that is definitely a viable option at a -4. Just be cautious. You are selling one of the best FPL assets in the game in Son, a midfielder that gets an additional point for a clean sheet and obviously a goal. And the argument isn't necessarily Son versus Kulusevski, it's Son versus Kane. And I think Kane is operating at a different level right now. He's looking like a brilliant option. But I just want to just put that out there, guys, that Son is still a phenomenal FPL asset and you shouldn't be looking past him. I just think that we are getting a little bit, obviously, caught up in the moment recently, but I understand why managers want to go to Harry Kane, absolutely. And again, guys, if you are enjoying it, I see we've got quite a few in right now. Please do drop a like. Obviously, it costs nothing and it supports the channel and the live stream. It gets it out to there. So if we can, as always, guys, get to 50 likes, I really do appreciate it massively. And as always, guys, with these player heat maps, please do let me know in the chat right now if you want me to do some comparisons. I can get them up in 30 seconds and we can have a back-to-back conversation about some players that you want me to compare. So please do drop that in the chat, guys. So we got one here from Torgier saying, play Rudiger or Doherty. Now, this is a really difficult one because, of course, if I said to you right now, Chelsea at home to Newcastle or Spurs away to Man United and Brighton, you'd probably say that Chelsea are the most likely for a clean sheet. Now, based on our algorithm points for game week 29 in isolation, and we'll do it by defenders here, we can see here that Rudiger is projected to score. Let me just get it up for you. Rudiger 4.8. Doherty, on the other hand, is projected to score 3.6. Now, again, I think that his minutes, of course, based on our algorithm, are looking at his minutes over his career at Spurs this season. So his algorithm points are not necessarily going to reflect what might happen, because I think if he gets more minutes over this double, that will give us a clearer picture on him as an FPL asset. I'd always favour the double game weeker, so I probably would go for Doherty, but if I had to put my hat on a clean sheet, it obviously would be Chelsea. I really think it's all about whether you really value those double game weeks or not. Obviously, with Doherty, you are getting that possibility there. So Doherty, I think, is probably the most attractive asset of the two right now if you're looking to play one of them this game week. That's a shot saying Kulusevski in for a -4 for Jota. Yeah, I think I probably would go for that route. I think Jota is a brilliant FPL asset. Absolutely, there's no denying it. But now with Diaz, Jota, Mane, Firmino, Salah, there is rotation there. And I really don't think that's necessarily worthwhile holding Jota now, unfortunately. So I would do that move for a -4 and look at it more as a longer term move rather than short term. FPL Dream, already done Foden to Kulusevski for my 1 free transfer. Should I do Jimenez to Kane for a -4 or Rudiger to Doherty and Broha to Kane for a -8? I would do the Jimenez to Kane for a -8. I think Rudiger is still a brilliant option going forward, and you can always make that move in game week 30 if you need to field a player in game week 30. So I would limit yourself. I would do Jimenez to Kane this game. We can leave it at that, FPL Dream. But of course, if you want to go a bit more upside chasing, I appreciate that. You might want to go for a few more doublers in Doherty, but I think I'll just go for the -4 point option. Shepard saying I took a -12 points and brought in Lacazette, Dyer, and Kulusevski. Don't mind it. And I think this is a discussion as well managers need to make is if you're worried about the rotation of the wing backs, then Dyer and Davis are still options that you could consider. Now, they're not the glamorous options in FPL. It is worth noting that. But if you want guaranteed minutes in that Spurs defence, then I think that is a route that you definitely could go down for sure. George Tip, -4 Mount or Coutinho to Saka. I would probably sell of the two. Probably Mason Mount just because you are selling a player that doesn't play in game week 30. And I think Coutinho's in brilliant form right now. Tom Campbell, I hope you're doing well, buddy. Appreciate it. I hope you're doing well as well. Leskip saying Kulusevski. So, Leskip, I apologise for that. If you have been a regular watcher, and I know you have been, please give me a little bit of a leeway on the pronunciation. You can see from my accent, I have a terrible Southwest farmer accent. I can hardly pronounce my own name, let alone these Premier League players. So I will butcher some players from time to time. It is worth mentioning for those that are tuned into the FPL Fan Show. Reguilon, I used to call him Reguilon. Terrible pronunciations from me. So I would try and get it better, but I can't promise anything. I apologise. Sondre saying transfer out Weghorst or Broha. Now, Weghorst is going to become an option that has doubles going further on. I think I'd probably sell Weghorst though right now and hold on to Broha just because of the price point of Broha. I think he's still a good option to hold. Greg, Bacon Bap. Whatever that's referenced to, but yes, of course, absolutely love one. Kulusevski versus Martinelli, Dr. Pepper saying, this is a really interesting discussion because as we know, Martinelli back on the agenda now after his red card. And a player that I think isn't necessarily getting as much love because of what Saka is doing right now. You can see on the projected points, Martinelli is expected to score 7.6 points in game week 29 in isolation. Saka, on the other hand, 8.4. So first and foremost, Saka versus Martinelli. I still think Saka is the best option if funds aren't a problem. Martinelli, though, at 1.3 million cheaper, I think is a brilliant alternative to Saka if you can't stretch that high. I wouldn't be losing sleep over not getting Saka because of Martinelli's underlying stats. You can see there Kulusevski, 7 points projected in game week 29, so slightly less than Martinelli. Now, if we kind of go a bit more macro and zoom out and look at over the next 3 game weeks, for example, for midfielders, we can see here that Martinelli is still projected to score more than Kulusevski, but only by a tiny amount. I wouldn't say it's enough to say one or the other is miles better. I think, again, it comes down to, do you have Spurs investment right now? If you don't, I think I would go for Kulusevski. Otherwise, if you don't have any Arsenal investment, then I think Martinelli is equally a great option to go to. And he's slightly cheaper as well, which is going to free up funds elsewhere to invest in your squad. So I think it comes down to, do you have investment in either team already? And if you don't have investment in one, then you go down the one that you don't have that investment in, if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. It's all saying an Odegaard versus Martinelli comparison. Yeah, that's a really good discussion to have. Let me just quickly drop it in now. So we're going to get... let me just bring them up. So we're going to get in Odegaard, which I imagine is probably in page 2 or 3. Here we go. And then we're going to be pairing him with Martinelli, which I would not be surprised if he is on the first page. Now second page. Wow. Or third page. Give me a second. Apologies. I'm probably absolutely missing Martinelli right now on the page. Where is Martinelli? This is terrible content, guys. I apologise. I'm just trying to find Martinelli. Scream at me in the chat if I am missing him right now. I imagine he's right in front of me. I could obviously just filter it by team, which I'm kind of debating doing now just to make sure I'm not wasting your guys' time while I search for Martinelli. Here we go. Martinelli. So let's get it up in isolation here. So Odegaard's someone that has been absolutely flying recently, and at his price point offered really good value. Right now, Odegaard priced at 5.5 million. We know Martinelli priced at 5.3 million. Now, based on points per game, Martinelli is leading the way on 4.1. But I'm really interested to see the touch heat map for Martin Odegaard, and it's kind of what I expected, really. He has been playing, obviously, in that midfield three rather than the front three. So he is being the creative force in this Arsenal team, getting plenty of touches in and around the middle third. But he is getting a few touches in and around that penalty spot, which is great to see. But there's no surprises that Martinelli is being the dominant one in the box. Obviously getting the end of some of the balls and obviously hitting that unbelievable finish in game week 28. So I'm going to come down all the way to average stats per 90. And again, just to remind you, Martinelli has played 1,100 minutes. So I would say that's a decent enough sample size to come to some conclusions about him as an FPL option. And you can see that the goals, expected goals, shots in the box are massively in Martinelli's favour. And Odegaard, no surprises, is being more the creative force with the attempted assists and big chances created. But I think the fact that Martinelli is slightly cheaper and underlying stats are in his favour, Martinelli is definitely the route that I would go down rather than Odegaard. Again, guys, let me know in the chat if you prefer one or the other. I think Martinelli is the standout option between the two there for sure. Absolutely. Saeed, just subscribe. Really like the content. Appreciate it, buddy. Thank you for tuning in and obviously enjoying it and subscribing. Really do appreciate it. And again, guys, if you haven't already, please do drop the live stream a like. Aditya saying, remove Coutinho for Kulusevski for a hit. I wouldn't rush to make that move, but if you really want to get some investment in the double game weeks, then I appreciate that that probably is the route you want to go down, so it's not too bad. My pronunciation of Kulusevski. Okay, so I'm saying Kulusevski, and it's actually Kulusevski. So from now on, I'm going to try and say Kulusevski. Apologies for that one. Kulusevski. I'm going to try and get this one sorted now, guys. So there's no more problems with it. Kulusevski. Right. Wazim saying Son and Kulusevski double up. It's not my optimal choice, personally. I think that the double up of Kulusevski and Kane is the route that I would like to go down if you were doubling up. But if you have a cheap option in your front line, you have that invested right now, you have no easy route to Kane, then I think a double up of Son and Kulusevski is not a bad move at all. I think that shouldn't be worried about. The skip, should I double up on Kane and Son or sell Son for Kulusevski? Look, if you could do Kane and Son and it doesn't hinder your squad, I think that's obviously the optimal double up for sure. So if Kane and Son are in your team, I wouldn't sell then Son for Kulusevski. I would just leave it at Kane and Son. But again, it's all about the rest of your squad, so I need to know about them. Mr. A says, better call him Decky. To be fair, calling him Decky is probably going to be easier than me calling him Kulusevski, but I am going to make a real conscious effort to call him Kulusevski, same as how I changed Reguilon to Reguilon, or probably still got that wrong. So, Ayub saying, Ziyech replacement. Well, based on the discussion that we have, I do think that Kulusevski is your best replacement for Ziyech, personally. So yeah, I think that's definitely an easy sideways move for you right now. CDM Bluebird saying, start Watkins or Weghorst. Well, again, we can look at our projected points here if you are looking at game week 29 in isolation. And we can see here that, well, neither are appearing on the page right now as we speak. So Weghorst is projected to score 3.1 points. Watkins, on the other hand, is projected to score 2.7. So based on that, based on the algorithm points, it would be Weghorst to go for. What I would say is, based on an eye test perspective, I saw really good things from Aston Villa. Now, again, it was against Leeds, who were absolutely shot as a team, so it is worth mentioning that. But I really like what Gerrard's doing with the system right now. I've touched on it again on this live stream already, but the combination of Ings and Watkins with Coutinho floating about, I really think it's just going to benefit Watkins going forward. So while I think Weghorst, based on our algorithm, is probably the route to go for, I do think that what is seen from an eye test perspective is only going to be beneficial for Watkins going forward. So yes, algorithm does say Weghorst, but from an eye test perspective, I did like to see what I've seen from Aston Villa going forward. Jonathan saying Rudiger to Doherty. Again, this is really dependent on your squad, Jonathan. Of course, you're going to get double the games for Doherty, but Rudiger going forward with Brentford in game week 31 is still a brilliant option going forward. Don't, look past Rudiger as an option. So guys, what I want to quickly do here before I touch on, I'm going to open the floor again to questions. I want to quickly come up with the Fantasy Football Fix Elite 11. Now, if you haven't seen this before, guys, I'm sure you have. It's some of the best managers in the world, I might add, with some of their unbelievable finishes. And we have the honor to have them on the Fantasy Football Fix website. And if you haven't seen it already, guys, it's basically a live update on what the best managers of the world are doing with their teams. You get insight into their thought process with them updating their notes. You can get notifications anytime they make a transfer. So if you see a manager that you associate yourself with, maybe one that's a bit more of a risk taker rather than one who's a bit more reserved, then you can put notifications on them. So when they do make their transfers, you get updated with them. Now, it's worth mentioning, because it isn't one of those crazy game weeks, no, I don't think any of the managers right now have made their transfers going into game week 29. So it is worth noting that we're not going to be getting any necessary insight from the managers. Now, the consensus 11 here is basically an amalgamation of the Elite 11. So it's combining all of the teams together for an average. So you can see the team in front of us here for game week 29 onwards. Now, again, as I mentioned, there's been no real transfers from some of the top managers. So we can't really delve into their decision making right now. But again, I just want to show you the teams of some of the top managers in the world right now. Some unbelievable ranks. I know Dan Bennett right now is doing unbelievable, and you all should obviously be following him on Twitter. But what I love, guys, about this is you can get an insight into their mindset right now. You can see the detailed manager notes from Dan Bennett on the screen there, discussing his thought process about Spurs players this game week, in particular Doherty and Kulusevski. And something that Dan is debating right now is doing the Salah to Son hokey cokey in game week 30 and then jumping back to Salah in game week 31. I think that's going to be something we are going to be discussing in next week's live stream for sure, because I think the hokey cokey of Salah to Son back to Salah could definitely pay dividends if you are looking to go down that route for sure. So again, guys, some great insight here from some of the top managers here. Highly recommend you guys checking out on our premium membership if it is something of interest to you, something that we do cover a lot on the live stream. And in particular, when we do get updates from managers who have played their transfers, we get a real idea on what direction they are going. So unfortunately, no transfers here from some of the top managers, but again, a real great feature of the Fantasy Football Fix website, which I highly recommend you guys checking out. So as I said, guys, let's open the floor again to some questions. Please drop them in. What we're going to do firstly, because I know a lot of people right now are discussing about free hit teams going forward. Let's get up the Fantasy Football Fix Game Week 29 Algorithm 11, because I know this is something that you guys always look forward to seeing every week. So this is it here. Now, again, this is effectively a free hit team based on our algorithm projected points. So if you are looking to play your free hit in Game Week 29, this is the route that we would go for based on our algorithm. Now, completely stacked full of double game week players. Absolutely no surprises there, but quite a few interesting inclusions into the algorithm squad that you probably wouldn't have been expecting. So first and foremost, Pickford. Now, I'm letting the algorithm do the work for me here, because on the face of it, I probably wouldn't agree with that. However, when we look at the double game weeks, Ramsdale, 2 tricky fixtures against Leicester, and of course, oh my God, I forgot the second one, but 2 tricky fixtures there, first and foremost. Then we know Spurs have got tricky fixtures against Brighton and of course Man United. So based on the fixtures alone, Newcastle and Wolves isn't a bad fixture for someone like Pickford. Now, would I go for him on a free transfer? Absolutely not. But in a free hit, I think he's not a bad move and a bit of a shrewd move. Now, a back three of Trent, Matip and Dyer. Again, potentially some rumours about Van Dijk, and I would prefer to see, of course, Robertson instead of Matip. So if funds are not an issue, then I do believe that Robertson is a better pick than Matip. And Dyer in the back line. Now, I probably would say this. If I was free hitting personally, I personally like a bit more risk and upside to my free hit team. So based on that, I probably would go for the Doherty move if I was free hitting. I think there's more attacking potential from him. But if you go for a safety option, Dyer has been one of the standout options in this Spurs team from a outside an FPL world. His minutes are absolutely locked. And based on that, if you just want to get guaranteed minutes in this double game week, I think Dyer is not a bad pick at all. Now you can see Salah with the captaincy, we've touched on that. He is by far the best captaincy pick this game week based on the projected points alone, and a great triple captain option. And the Arsenal double up of Saka and Martinelli, I think is a really nice move as well, because of course you're doubling down on the fixtures that they have first and foremost, which while they're not amazing, I see that Leicester game in particular as potential for returns from them. And I do think as well, with the pace that Saka and Martinelli pose, with Liverpool being so influenced with their fullbacks in their game, I think that's going to be a real tough test for Trent Alexander-Arnold and Robertson. And I would expect Saka and Martinelli to get some joy against those fullbacks, in particular if the rumours of Van Dijk being out are true. Now, Son included is a no-brainer, obviously Kane, and Lacazette plus Maupay. Now, I would argue that you could potentially manipulate this a little bit, get rid of Dyer, maybe get rid of Maupay and chuck a Kulusevski in your midfield and go for a 3-5-2 formation. But we know Maupay, one of the biggest FPL trolls in the game, could be the highest scorer in this double. We never know it. So that is the algorithm squad there, guys, in front of you. Let me know what you think about it. I think there's personally quite a few interesting choices in there, which I wasn't expecting to see. So it's really interesting to see some of those players pop out there. So as I said, guys, if I haven't answered your question already, please do drop it in. We'll be going for just under an hour now, so I'm going to try and cover as many questions as I can. And again, just to reiterate, if you just jumped on this live stream, first and foremost, please do hit that like button, and of course check out the Fantasy Football Fix website. All the links are in the bio. We have already covered in detail in the hot topics section, just in case I don't come back to it, because we've deep dived into it earlier on the live stream. So I highly recommend you going back to watch it. Doherty versus Reguilon, we've gone into big detail on that, and I think the conclusion is Doherty is probably the route I would go down just on the price point. We've looked at the best defenders if you're on a free hit game week 30 strategy, and if you are on a non-game week 30 strategy. We've also looked at Kulusevski versus Son, and of course the algorithm 11 plus projected points. So please do check all of that if you want a detailed hot topic section on that. Right then, guys, let's cover some of these hot topics. Michael, I'm bringing in Martinelli and Salah this week. Absolutely no problems with that, Michael. I think there's some solid moves. My question to you is, why have you not got Salah already? That's my only thing I'm saying. Punk J, I think. VVD or Robertson for the long run, because Robertson is benched every few games, but VVD is always in the lineup. I think if you have the funds available, Robertson, and you just leave it how it is. Robertson may get benched, but I think now they're in this title race, I think he starts, if not all games, and he's been a phenomenal asset right now, and the underlying stats are brilliant. If you have the funds available, don't worry about it. Go for Robertson. I think that's by far the best pick. Subham saying, Rudiger, Coutinho, Broha, bench which one? If I had to bench one of those three, I probably would go for Broha. Even though the fixture is decent, Coutinho, it looks brilliant. He looks back to his best. Rudiger at home to Newcastle. I always fancy Chelsea for a clean sheet, so I probably would go for benching Broha of the bunch. Andy, if you had Sarr, Saiz, Jimenez and Weghorst on your bench, would you bench boost instead of triple captain? So let's just look at it here. Wolves have got their fixtures against. Let's just get the fixture schedule up for us. So Wolves are away to Everton. Well, Everton we know are a much better team at home, so I don't necessarily think the defence, the clean sheet is an absolute certainty. So based on that logic, I know it's not necessarily logic, I would say that you might not get two clean sheets there. Jimenez against a leaky Everton team could always do well, and then Weghorst is playing Burnley. Brentford away. No, I think you definitely go for your triple captain on Mo Salah. I think there'll be better opportunities for you to bench boost later on in the season, Andy. I think there's going to not be many better opportunities to triple captain, in particular Mo Salah this game week. Right, let's cover some more questions here. A few news about Chelsea. Obviously, the situation there is absolutely crazy right now. Milos, would you do Saïss Doherty for -4? Would I do it for -4? I actually would be very tempted by it. I think there's a chance Saïss could lose this spot. I think that you're going to get a player that's going to be playing double this game week, obviously in 30 and 31. I'll be tempted by that move personally, yes. Let's get best Chelsea midfielder to bring in for the fixtures after game week 30. Very difficult right now, but I think Havertz would be my #1 priority right now. It looks like he's got that striker slot basically secured. I would go for Havertz of the bunch. Mount otherwise is a nice option as well. John, is game week 35 too late for a wildcard? No, I think if you have the strategy of bench boosting in game week 36, that makes the wildcard in game week 35 really powerful. Don't think it's too late at all. What I probably would recommend is getting 15 doublers if you're going for the bench boost game week 36 option, and then look to flood out all those players and just try and get an isolated 11 where you can really pile into the last few game weeks. But Cal, should I buy Robertson for Cancelo? I don't necessarily think you have to make that move, but based on the double game week, I do like Robertson as an option going forward. Neither of those playing game week 30, so obviously either one is going to be a problem for you in that week. I would probably go for Robertson and go for the long-term option. Saïss Doherty, more paid to Kane, Cornet to Odegaard or Martinelli for a -12. I would go for Martinelli over Odegaard personally. And the Saïss Doherty move I like more. But yes, I probably would go for that move and consider it more of a longer term move for you. Tom Campbell was saying about, Tom Campbell, apologies. Eddie versus the algorithm video is great to check out too. Yes, absolutely recommend it, guys. Eddie dropped a video on the Fantasy Football Fix YouTube channel, I believe yesterday or the day before. Please do check it out. Brilliant video. And again, Tom Campbell's video as well on Fantasy Football Fix stats. FPL stats is a brilliant video as well. I highly recommend checking that one out as well. So you're saying, should I transfer Coutinho out and Doherty in for a -4? I need to know who you're selling Coutinho for that one, really, mate. George, start Broha or Jimenez. I would probably start, super close, probably just Jimenez, but it's a really tough one to go for there. Stephen, is Kane or Salah a more differential captain for someone around 30k? And should I take the risk since I'm aiming for top 10k? I think I would just go for Mo Salah personally. Yes, I think Kane is a brilliant option as well, but I just think the captaincy is going to be heavily on Salah's favour. And I think while Kane could do really well, I probably think that there's more risk of you getting burnt by not going Mo Salah and your rank being at risk personally. Grant, Rafinha out for Kulusevski for a -4. No Kane, but own Son and Doherty. Rafinha shooting blanks but plays Norwich. I would always hate to sell a player personally ahead of Norwich, so I don't think I would be big on that. But if you're looking at it longer term, then I think it could pay itself back longer term. So yeah, I don't mind it, but it's just worth noting that Rafinha against Norwich and Bamford is going to be returning as well. I think that improves Leeds from an attacking perspective massively. Damien say, what page is this? This is Fantasy Football Fix. Hopefully that helps. The page. Bloody hell. Sorry, I thought you just dropped by there. Yeah, this is the, Tom's dropped it in. It's the fixture analyzer right now. I appreciate this might not be the most kind of detailed thing to check out, so I'm just going to leave the algorithm points in front of us for all players. What I am probably going to have to do, guys, is do another few minutes, and then I'm conscious we've been going for over an hour, so hopefully I've answered the majority of the questions, but if you have any more last-minute ones, please do drop them in, and I'll try and answer them. Will, as I'm on a free hit 30, does it make more sense to keep and bench Bowen and sell Coutinho for Saka due to the fixtures? It's a really difficult one right now. I think because Bowen's injury right now, him being out, I'll be almost tempted to sell Bowen for Saka and keep Coutinho on your side. You know Coutinho plays in game week 30. You know he's on great form right now. So I almost prefer Bowen to Saka and keep Coutinho because he plays in game week 30. Oh, apologies. You're on a free hit for game week 30. Okay, so based on that, I appreciate that Bowen could be available after game week 30. So, yeah, I think you could definitely do that, but I wouldn't be big on selling Coutinho right now after seeing the performances that he's putting in, personally. Jack, would you bench boost this? Sarr, James, Ramsey, and Shah would probably do James to Doherty and Coutinho to Son. I probably wouldn't bench boost that. I don't think it's as strong as you think, but if you're not wildcarding in game week 35, then you might not get better opportunities. So I appreciate that you might want to see your bench boost later on in the season or not. So yeah, obviously it depends if you have your wildcard available. Well, this gives me enough to do James to Robbo, by the way. I love James to Robbo if you can do that route for sure. I'm considering Salah triple captain, but debating saving it for game week 36. Any thoughts? Yeah, I think I would just go for the triple captain in game week. in this game week. Play what's in front of you right now. We don't know what the double is going to be in game week 36. Yes, you could have an amazing fixture in front of you, but I think you've been given another opportunity to triple captain Mo Salah in a double. I wouldn't waste it. I would just go for it personally, and I think that's probably the best move that I can recommend. So guys, I think a lot of the questions now are pretty similar, so we're going to wrap up the live stream here. Just been going over an hour, so if you haven't had your question answered, please do rewind the live stream, because we've covered a lot of the hot topics, gone into a lot of detail on most of the main topics that a lot of people are discussing right now. So highly recommend you rewinding the live stream. Now again guys, the deadline is 11 a.m. UK time tomorrow, so please do not miss the FPL deadline. Make sure you get your teams locked in. If you are going for triple captain Salah, I wish you all the best. I will be someone who is doing that myself. On your way out guys, it is free. Please do drop a like on the live stream just to support the channel. And if you did enjoy it and aren't a subscriber right now, please do hit that subscribe button to support the channel. All the information about Fantasy Football Fix is in the bio. All the information that we'll be using is from Fantasy Football Fix. So I highly recommend you guys just uploading your squad for free just to check out the app, which we have, and also obviously the website, which is a brilliant part of the FPL community. So please do check out all the information in the bio. So all that's left for me to say, guys, is have a brilliant game week. Hope your arrows are green. Cheeks, I hope you're doing well. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you guys in the next live stream. I could be back and be in the top 1K. Who knows? That would be a great thumbnail to have for the next live stream. So fingers crossed you guys have a great game week, and we will talk very soon. Take care, guys. Cheers.